In the mid-18th century, the North American continent was a playing field where European nations competed. The coveted prize was dominion over the rich, vast land itself. The British colonists were, for the most part, proud of their identity as British citizens. In 1754, when war broke out with the French over land in the Ohio Valley, the colonists supported the mother country. They contributed supplies for the British Army, as well as troops of their own, like the Virginia militia, which included the young George Washington. To coordinate this effort, London officials ordered the colonies from Virginia northward to send delegates to convene in Albany, New York. Members of the Iroquois Nation were also invited to Albany, in hopes that they would support the British cause, or at least remain neutral.
The plan behind the Albany Congress was to get as many colonies together as possible, to discuss ways to coordinate and pay for military defense of the colonies. And this had not been an issue before, but there'd never been the threat of a kind of a pan-Indian war on the western frontier.
What actually happened is that a few colonists, and Benjamin Franklin was the primary instigator in this regard, decided that as long as some of the colonists were getting together to talk to Indians, maybe they would get together and talk to each other as well. And they would develop what became known as the Albany Plan of Union. It was an ambitious plan. Its greatest significance was that it came from the colonists. They were the ones who created this. Everybody at the Congress signed on to it, or most people did. Then they sent it off to the various colonies to be ratified, and not one colony accepted it.
The Albany Congress is a foreshadowing of Congresses that will come in the next decade. It indicates that in 1754, the colonies weren't ready to surrender autonomy. They didn't see themselves as part of a large unit yet.
In the French and Indian War, the colonies were pawns in a larger struggle for global dominance. After the Treaty of Paris in 1763, the American playing field would never look the same. The defeated French departed the board altogether. Some of their Indian allies were now declared enemies, and British troops were left behind to defend the colonies against them. Before long, the British were facing off against the colonists over who would pay for this protection.
In 1763, the English proclaimed something called the Proclamation Line. What they wanted to do was keep the English colonists along the seacoast and keep the Indians to the west. And what they did was keep some English troops along the Proclamation Line to try to preserve that border. And they wanted Americans to pay for that. The problem was Americans didn't even want the soldiers there, and they did not want to pay for it with taxes enacted by Parliament. But it was, in terms of the actual money, that really wasn't the issue. The issue was more, do they have a right to tax us? Do we want these British soldiers here? We thought they were all going to go home after the war and we were going to go out west and make all this money, and all of a sudden those opportunities were closed to them and they were being taxed for the first time by Parliament.